So first off, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is John Fox. I am a senior product manager at Commvault for all of our public and private cloud offerings. So by private cloud, we're talking about things such as VMware, Hyper-V, Citrix Zen, and soon to be released Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization. Today, public cloud, of course, one of our tightest partners is AWS. We also have direct support for Azure and some other cloud providers to a limited extent. So today, obviously, we're looking at taking things beyond just cloud backup. And what I mean by that is that now that your data is in the cloud, all of the great opportunities that open up to you by having data residing in AWS. So I'm not going to ask too many questions, but one I would like to ask, who actively has data residing in S3 or Glacier today? Great. So I'd say about half the room. Anyone in the room leveraging AWS for their DR strategy or part of their DR strategy? Great. And what about production workloads actively running in AWS? Okay, good numbers. So just at a real high level, we're going to basically show today how to make it easier to move data into the cloud and protect data while it's in the cloud. So this presentation is going to start pretty high with positioning and use cases, and then we're going to sort of dive a bit into the weeds on how it's done under the covers. So before we get started, we also have a Commvault customer here today with us. So at the tail end of the session, we're going to have a Commvault customer testimonial. So I'd like to introduce Jesse Baird from Melbourne IT. So he is going to share his story, how AWS and Commvault made their lives much easier and solved many serious problems that they were having. So I got to remember to use this. So this is a boilerplate slide from the AWS folks, what to expect from this session. So again, high level, moving beyond the cloud is a backup target. So DR into the cloud, active workloads in the cloud. And we're going to go into some of the latest integration we have with AWS in terms of moving these workloads. So our next rev of our product is coming out this quarter. So we're going as bleeding edge we can, showing you this functionality before someone hauls me in front of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Next piece is best practices from the field. We have learned a lot of best practices from our hundreds and hundreds of customers about how things work well in the cloud. We've also learned a lot of horrible things that customers have done and gone wrong. So while we may find it amusing, we do have a list of things you definitely do not want to do. We're actually going to see a few demos. One, pretty high level, is going to show how easy it is to get data into the cloud, how quickly you can start writing data into the cloud. The next is a DR into the cloud, taking a running VMware instance and pushing it directly into an EC2 instance. And the last demo is taking it a step further, where we can actually protect AWS or Azure running VMs at an image level like we do on site. And of course, we left some time for questions at the end. And again, you can come see us after if we run out of time. So what is the cloud? Why is it so attractive? Cover some of those points there. Some of the most common use cases for the cloud. And the big question here, or I'd say the big driving point here is my data is in the cloud, now what? And again, Jesse's going to come up, and again, more Q&A. So one thing I do want to throw out there, and I apologize here, looks like some slides got mixed up here. So bear with me 1 second, please. All right, these things happen. And again, for those that don't know the cloud, constantly getting asked questions of, I can't access it, it runs in the cloud. Or when my father can't get to his favorite online slot machine site. That's him. Anyway, that went over like a lead balloon. Okay. So again, cloud today is mainstream. Think back 6, 7 years ago when you were going down that virtualization road. You were tinkering with it. You may have said, okay, I'll run some machines in it, but just that tier 3 machine over there, that if it breaks, it's destroyed, it's not important. I don't need to worry about it. Then we saw that evolution where we started seeing those tier 1 critical apps being virtualized. They essentially were being treated and provisioned like a physical machine, however, they ran on a virtual platform, meaning there was an uptake, there was a little bit of hesitancy, and we're here today to say, or I think people would agree, is that we've now reached that level of maturity in cloud computing. We're beyond just tinkering in there, or maybe a secondary workload. If it's critical, I'm keeping it on-prem. We are now seeing customers host tier 1 critical applications in the cloud. And I like the second analogy here. There's 2 types of organizations. You're either using the cloud, or you say you don't use the cloud, but you're actually using the cloud. So if you have, you look at it as the consumerization of IT, you have one employee using Dropbox or OneDrive or what have you, and they're using it for work, your business is in the cloud. And again, if you've looked at other providers with clouds, there's all new terminology. It's a whole new learning curve. Hey, all of you know about VMDK files, or I'm assuming most of you know about VMDK files, and vCPU sockets, this and that. But now we have all these new things to learn: instance types, EC2, elastic block, S3, S3IA now, Snowball, Glacier. So the point being is, a lot of the design and the economics of the cloud really flip things on their head from a cost perspective. But they also, your teams, as you make that migration, have a whole bunch of new tech that they need to learn. And again, we are seeing where companies now are saying, I'm not going to expand my physical infrastructure, where I don't have the room or I don't have the money. They can quickly and easily stand those production workloads in that cloud provider of your choice, such as AWS. And again, we're talking about ease of resources, just like we had with VMware. Once you had that farm, you started seeing all these VMs that never would have passed muster if it was a physical machine. So you had the sprawl, ease of spinning them up. Cloud takes that to a whole another level. You have a credit card, you have some idea what you're doing, you can have applications running in the cloud in a couple hours. And then the credit card bill comes, and you have to explain that to your supervisor. And bottom piece here, one of the biggest misconceptions we see is that if my data is in the cloud, it's protected. True, the cloud offers robust failover or resiliency or continuance, but it's not protection. You're still going to need to complement that. So you can look at it too, I have an S3 bucket. Hey, I can have that in 3 different data centers in a region, or I can have 6 copies across 2 regions. Point being, these things are in lockstep with each other. So if you inject some sort of corruption or failure in one copy, you now have 6 copies of garbage. And last is portability. What we mean by portability, we're not saying, hey, I have a bunch of data here, can I send it to the cloud? That's table stakes, that's easy. Can I move it in a format that is usable or can be worked with in that particular platform of my choice? So simplifying it, the containerization of data. It's a bunch of disks and a configuration file, and once I have that, I know how to put it back together. Okay, many of you know these. Backup archive to the cloud. This was embraced en masse many years ago. In my opinion, this is now table stakes. If you don't have this, you're not coming to the party. The difference here is how many vendors do you support, and are you able to take advantage of all the functionality that particular vendor offers? And we'll go a bit deeper into that. And again, disaster recovery in the cloud. So think of it this way. I have running Hyper-V, and I want to recover into AWS. There's a lot of translation that needs to be done there. So is it possible with many file-based tools? Yes, but it's a whole lot of work trying to put that back together. And the last is actually backup in the cloud. I have active running workloads, and I want to protect it for longer-term retention. And hey, I may want a copy of that, and I'm going to send it to another region. because I'm sure none of us would want to be in that region, but it is possible an entire region could be taken offline with a big enough catastrophe. And the last, we can't forget about this, but my opinion is test dev came along with the archive and backup to the cloud. Think about it. It's a real simple use case. Developers sometimes have the same or more demanding infrastructure needs than production. We see that in a lot of our customers where the dev test workloads are 3 times what the production are. But the problem is they're developers and they're testers. They only use those resources for a certain period of time. So what we've seen with customers is that they can go out, the dev teams and the testers, they don't need to procure that hardware. They spin up whatever they need, do their dev test work, and destroy it once they're done. The nice thing about that is they did not need to procure any hardware, and the second they destroy those workloads, they're no longer paying for those workloads. All right, so I'm going to tell a little bit of a story here before we get deep into the functionality. Backup and replication and recovery are table stakes. Can I back it up? Can I back it up in a consistent manner? Can I back it up in a manner that does not impact the application as a part of protecting it? And recovery is great, but 2 things there. You've got to consider how fast can I recover it, and can I recover it in a format that is most useful to the needs of the application. So going to use a VMware instance. I can bring back that entire virtual machine. I can bring back a single disk. I can bring back files or folders within that drive, or I can even crack into database files and bring back application level items. So it's speed, and is it in a format that is useful to me? So those are table stakes. Yeah, I'd like to think we do it better than others, offering a variety of options with hardware integration. But we're going to build it out to the life cycle of the virtualized workload. Being able to manage and provision and control costs on virtualized workloads. Today, we support VMware, Hyper-V, and AWS and Azure. And what I mean by that is we can actually push out virtualized workloads of your choice. We can control the instance types in an effort to reduce costs, and we can even set leases on it, because developers, they'll bang on your door to get what they want to develop. As soon as they're done, they go get something to eat and they forget about the machine. And the last piece is archive. Any of these workloads at some point will reach the end of their useful life. So you may be able to outright delete these, but you may need to keep them for longer-term retention it could be compliance reasons, being able to archive them all. But let's take it a step further. A tool that can identify potential waste in your various cloud platforms, meaning scanning the environment, finding running workloads that are stale and dormant or old, and come back with a list where you can potentially destroy instances, or you can delete VMs if it's on-prem. The purpose there is you're going to reclaim some of your resources, and you're also going to reduce future expenditures on hardware and licensing costs. You can put off that expansion buying a new array or a few more blades for your, let's say, your VMware farm. Okay, start with backup to the cloud. So one thing I like to call out, Commvault did introduce or announce support. We've been working with Amazon over the summer, integrating with their new S3IA platform, so we can directly talk to that platform. And I'll go a little bit deeper into that. So we're going to look, getting data to the cloud fairly simple. So one thing Commvault does is we don't require any appliance to talk to the cloud. I'm not going to say appliances don't have their use cases, but when you have an appliance and it's backended by cloud storage, hey, your data's on the cloud, but only that appliance knows what to do with it or how to talk to it. So you definitely want something that can natively talk to the cloud, and that's what opens up all the possibilities of all the other things I can do with that data once it's up there. So look at things. So the first step, native cloud support, broad vendor support, deep integration with the offerings of the various cloud providers. The other piece is if you have a 10 gig connection to the cloud, you are on the Autobahn. More than likely, you have a 1, 2, or 3 gig connection to the cloud. So if you're going to send any sort of sizable data sets up there, you need to move that data only once in its entirety. So that's where things such as on-site deduplication come into play. We know what's up there, we'll look at it before we ship it, and we'll only send unique data. So you only have to go through the pain of getting that data there once. So you could do it over the wire, depending on your data size, and just let it go. Or you can even seed that data. So some of you may have saw the announcement this morning on Snowball. So Commvault can, obviously we need to certify it since it's brand new, but it's S3 compatible, you write to it, I create my library, I ship it to AWS, they will put it there for me, and then I connect back to it. As I go on, only my unique data will be sent up there. Or you can buy your own drives and ship them. So a few key points on this, obviously, is only having moved the data once, only taking advantage, or excuse me, not taking advantage, taking advantage of deduplication to accommodate for pipes that may not be all that fast, incremental forever. And the last piece is we will efficiently manage the amount of data that's residing in your cloud storage, meaning we will remove the bits as they age off, whatever your retention policy may be. Okay. So bear with me here. This one, high-level demo, just going to show exactly how easy it is to get data writing to the cloud. And of course, it's now minimized again. So while I'm saying this, and I know I already said this, is who knows how to create an S3 bucket? All right, yeah, so it's easy. You know how to create an S3 bucket? You're already well on the way. So I just go into my account, I create an S3 bucket, a very quick process. Obviously did edit some of this for time, so no one's staring and watching paint dry. So we're going to create this in a US. And we're going to just write some quick data up there, just going to show you how easy it is. All right, so I have my bucket. Next step, I'm going to go get my keys. Mind you, this account has been destroyed, so even though I'm showing you both of my keys, you cannot do anything with it. So I'm going to go ahead and get my keys. So once I have my keys, this is what we'd use to talk to your S3 bucket library. Seemed to play a lot faster when I was watching it earlier. All right, so that's done. We created a bucket. We're now actually going to jump into our software. We're going to create a brand new library. And you can see here, we have cloud storage library. And you can see, we can name it whatever we want. Once we do the drop down to the supported vendors, you can see pretty much as long as it's using any sort of industry standards. Of course, we recommend AWS, but more than likely, we can write to it. We've seen a lot of countries with data sovereignty laws where mom and pop shops are set up because AWS or Azure may not have a data center there. So they have to write in country, so now they're a cloud storage provider. So all we're doing now here is we're putting those keys in. And really, that is it. Once we click OK here, we're connected. And we're just actually going to just kick off a job with a very small amount of data and push it up there. So again, the point here isn't like, wow, we can write to cloud storage. The point of this is it's that easy. So we now have our library. Video doesn't look like it's moving. There it goes. And it's simple as that. We're going to run the job, and after the job runs, it'll complete in a couple seconds. We're going to drill into the bucket we just created and just show you we actually just did write some data to the cloud there. And that will take a second. Okay, job's done. We're just going to go back into our AWS interface. And we're just going to pop into our library, show it actually contains some data in there. And again, so it's not smoke and mirrors. We're going to go out and AWS, drill back down into our bucket, and show you that, in fact, we did write some of our data there. All right, so I think we got the point there. And that's it. Okay. So let's now take a look at that next use case there. All right. I have a cloud library. I wrote data to my cloud library. It could be my secondary or my tertiary copy. What can I do with it now? So we're going to lay out some of the use cases here. Since Commvault wrote that data to that S3 cloud library, it can connect to it and can understand it. So that opens the door for many possibilities. This could be a DR solution where I had nothing more before than a pile of tapes and wishful thinking, or perhaps an incomplete DR solution where many of you may have a secondary data center, but it's only going to accommodate your tier 1 and some of your tier 2 apps. Again, that whole test dev, very early on adopted around the same time the cloud backup and archive. Analytics. I have this whole massive amount of data I need to run analytics on that I simply do not have the horsepower on-premise to do. I can send that data to the cloud, spin up a few hulking instances, run my analytics, get the data back that I need, and then destroy those, stop paying for them, and even delete that data if needed. Again, many customers looking to actively migrate. Some workloads are going to be decommissioned. The physical server may be decommissioned, but I may still see that application, so they're using it as a migration tool. And even portability across clouds. At first, I thought it sounded crazy until I heard it from dozens of customers. I'm going to the cloud. OK, great. Who are you choosing? I'm choosing AWS. OK, and what's your DR solution? Azure. OK, but as I heard that over and over, that is definitely a real-world use case. And one of the things we're looking to do is give customers the capability to easily move these workloads across these platforms. All right, so exactly how do we do that? Or what's next there? And my clicker's not working. It's just going wonderful. All right, so we touched on some of the bits of disaster recovery to the cloud. So how does this start? Well, if my DR plan is to the cloud, I'm going to start on-premise. I'm going to do my backups. I'm going to write them to disk. And that is going to be my quick recovery copy. My secondary, or could be possibly tertiary copy, is going to be into the cloud. So I am going to write to my S3 buckets up there. And once we have it in an S3 bucket, any other piece of our data movers in Commvault, we call a media agent. They can connect to this data and begin recovering it into an EC2 instance. So I can bring these back as virtual machines. So how we do this under the covers, and we're going to see this in a video, one of the big initiatives we have at Commvault is we are becoming platform or hypervisor agnostic, meaning if you want to use this here and this here for recovery, or this is an alternate platform, we will let you seamlessly move those workloads across those platforms. So in this case here, we will actually seamlessly take a VMware image and directly push it, do the conversion process, and push this into an EC2 instance. But what about my physical agents or my physical workloads? They're running an agent and guest, or not virtualized. Through the provisioning tool, which I had mentioned earlier, we can automatically orchestrate the spinning up of those instances, inject the appropriate file system agent, and begin recovery of those physical systems. So the point here being is getting data to the cloud is easy. It's, again, can I put it in a format that is useful and makes it easy for me to do? OK, I promise the videos get better as they go on. So next one we're going to be taking a look at is this process in play. All right. So we're going to walk this through the process. So in this case, we're going to say we're going to do migration. So this is planned. It's not a failover. I'm going to power down my VMware virtual machine one last time. Can't get more consistent than being in a powered down state. And then I'm going to run one final protection operation against that machine. So I have the latest point in time. So as part of that process, after I protected it, I'm then going to ship up those incremental changes to my S3 bucket. So the magic of editing, this should complete relatively quickly. And this is where, well, I'm biased, obviously, some of the very interesting stuff comes in. So again, it was a VMware backup, but in my full virtual machine recovery options here, as you can see, I can send this to Hyper-V, I can send this to Azure, I can send this to Amazon. And like I said, we'll handle that whole conversion process for you. So I pick my machine, and once this screen comes up, you'll see some for those of you familiar with it, we can now select, hey, what is my name? What zone am I going to be living in? We'll automatically port the VM configuration into an equal instance type. You have the ability to throttle that up or throttle that down in the event you want to change that. I have a bucket here. This is just the working directory for part of the conversion process. And then we are on our way. So again, this does take some time, but we do edit this for time. So once this completes, which we'll do in a moment, we'll actually go ahead and dive into our AWS account and take a look at our running instances. All right, so we're going to go in, take a look at our EC2 instances. We're going to take only a look at the ones that are running. And just again, to show it's not smoke and mirrors, yes, it has the same name, but we're going to pull up an RDP session and actually just log into it and ask it, what's your name? And simple as that, even though the name's right there. All right, so that's it in a nutshell. See what the process works like. And part of the thing is we're going to be constantly enhancing the platforms we support for cross-platform recovery. All right, so now we are going to look at protecting cloud workloads. Well, the cloud provides a bit of a challenge from on-premise hypervisors due to the fact they wisely do not expose the underlying platform to us because horrible things would happen. So, like I said, a hypervisor level backup if you have a V8AP with VMware. So that typically leaves us with a few options. I can put in an agent and guest, but then again, it kind of makes things complicated from recovery. If I first need to spin up a new instance, I got to put an agent in there, then recover my data. And this thing's still broken. So, interestingly enough, and this is where we're really taking it cutting edge. So we've already made the assumption you're doing some sort of on-premise backup, or you could be moving away from it. You've moved data to the cloud. You recover some data to the cloud. It could be DR, it could be migrated, it could be net new workloads. And you're going to need to protect the data in the cloud. So again, going back to the whole platform agnostic, they don't expose the hypervisor to us. But the one thing we can do is we can call EBS snapshots against these machines. I can also query AWS to say, tell me about that instance type. What's its name? What's its IP? What does it do? So I have my disks. I have the config file, an XML file that tells me how to put everything back together. Once we capture that, I can port that across any platform. So it may sound strange. You may hear people saying the cloud is a one-way street, meaning if you go there, you're not going to be pulling workloads back. I see quite the opposite. You have some customer decides, I'm giving up on this, or dev test needs to pull it back down, the ability to protect at an image level, and then bring it back down and seamlessly recover it back into, let's say, a VMware environment. So how we're going to be doing this in AWS is I can call the EBS snaps and think of it almost as a proxy living in the cloud. Hey, you 10 EC2 instances, I'm going to call snaps on you. I'm going to mount those EBS snaps to myself, and then I'm going to back you up for longer-term retention, and I'm going to protect you back to, I'm going to write you back to an S3 bucket. Same applies in Azure. Azure, we can see the VHD files, so I can read the VHD files. I can query, say, tell me about this configuration. So this is going to give us the ability to seamlessly move these workloads across these various platforms. So slide gets a little complicated there, but you get the picture. Send it wherever you want, and we'll take care of the conversion process for you. Just met with a customer today where they're under a very huge initiative to move their entire data centers. They've fully embraced AWS, and they're kind of struggling to figure out, well, how am I going to do this? Okay, I figured a way to do this, but it's complicated, it's very costly, it's very time-consuming, but we're definitely looking to make that easier. All right, last demo. This is very future-looking, so I can only show you a bit, but how we are going to do AWS protection. So we're going to take care of this all under the covers. So we actually have a snap engine for EBS storage. So that's how we call our protection points. So here, with my Amazon instance, as you can see, I'm talking through my access key and my secret key. We also have a key pair, so it knows who I am and trusts me. And this is my machine that is residing within AWS. And that is the one making the calls to the other EC2 instances. And he is back-ended by AWS library, so S3 in this case. And what we're going to do here is just show some of the targeting options. So just as you target VMware and you see that hierarchical tree view or Hyper-V, we're going to be able to give you that same sort of functionality for your EC2 instances residing in AWS. So selecting content, I mean, really, the one doing the protection has to reside in AWS, obviously. But deciding what's going to be backed up is extremely simple. I can go out and browse. I'm going to see all of Amazon's global regions. Many of you are probably familiar with this very view. So I'm already protecting one VM, but you know what? I want to go and protect all my EC2 instances residing in Oregon. Just to show here, obviously, we're an East Coast company. We have quite a few more on the East Coast. And hey, I'm going to protect this entire region. Again, what's going on under the covers? We're calling those EBS snaps, mounting it to itself, collecting that metadata about the VM. And once we have that, we have what we need to recover directly back into AWS. And again, in future waves, it could be directly into Azure format. You want to bring it back down on-prem, it could be a Hyper-V or a VMware format. We can even get more granular with various targeting options. And exclusion, and then again, we can preview and ensure that we're actually backing up what we actually intended to back up. Okay, so actually at this point, you heard it from me, but obviously I'm biased, I work for Commvault. I am now going to hand this over to Jesse Baird, who is a Commvault customer. And Jesse, it is all you.
Thank you, hello everyone. As John said, I've come all the way from Australia and representing Melbourne IT to talk about AWS and Commvault, and also to make lose a bit of money, or as I like to put it to my fiance, make a valuable contribution to the future of Las Vegas. So a little bit about us. We're Australia's largest cloud services and mobile application provider. We began about 19 years ago as the sole registrar for .au namespace in Australia. We grew pretty quickly from that point by adding on shared web and email services to host those domains. In about 2006, we bought a company called Web Central, who was the go-to company in Australia for enterprise and government internet workloads. And from that spawned our enterprise services division. Today, we employ over 600 people in Australia and New Zealand. We have over 600,000 customers, and we're one of the largest domain registrars in the world. So after acquiring Web Central, we wanted to become a leader in obviously mobile and cloud services. So we purchased an Australian leader in applications for mobile called Outware. We aligned ourselves with cloud providers like AWS, and we made alliances with companies like Second Watch. In 2012, we became a partner of Amazon in Australia, around the same time that the Sydney instance was brought up. Then in 2014, we became a premier partner. And this year, we've become the first accredited partner in Australia to meet the Managed Services AWS program. So what we've done is we've worked on some key technologies that we think are key to businesses these days to deliver online and mobile applications. The key things for us were to leverage cloud for agility and efficiency, to deliver well-architected and usable mobile applications, and to provide powerful analytics information for better decision-making process. So this brings me to why we're here, which is AWS and Commvault and how that helped us as Melbourne IT. So back a little while ago, we had a problem. We made some poor choices in our capacity planning, especially around backups. The data was growing, our internal workloads were growing, our customer workloads were growing, and we didn't have enough backup storage. So I did what every good techie does. I went to Google and I started searching. And I searched through cloud storage options. And we were a Commvault customer at the time, and I found that there was a cloud storage connector. So I had a bit of a look around at it, and I thought, this looks pretty good. This seems all too easy. So if you look here, basically what we had is, it's a pretty typical Commvault setup. We run some VMs and some physical machines, which have Commvault agents, so we use the VSA. We back up via the media agent to some sort of local storage. And this was filling up. So what we did was we connected the Amazon S3 cloud storage connector as John showed in his demo. Very simple to do. I thought, wow, this is way too simple. It's way easier than putting a storage unit in. And as you know, some of the challenges about putting in a storage unit, obviously there's the cabling, the physical component of it. There's the cost. There's negotiating with your finance team about the cost. And having the capacity to grow into is quite a challenging conversation to have, whereas this, you pay for what you use. If you stop using it, you delete the data, you stop paying for it. Very easy conversation to have with the finance people. So I came up with another crazy idea. I said, well, how about no local storage? So I started experimenting with writing directly to S3. And when I say that, that's via a local media agent using the global dedupe technology so that we only send unique blocks to the cloud, which with bandwidth restrictions in Australia is very important because we don't have the bandwidth luxury that you have in the US. But we managed to get a couple of terabytes worth of data up into S3 within a day. So where to next with this? I mean, we've had a lot of success with just backing up to the cloud into S3. So what we're looking at the moment is some of the stuff that John spoke about earlier, which is DR to the cloud. And after we've finished looking at that, we have about 10 data centers because we've acquired a lot of companies over the last 5 or 6 years. So we're looking at using Commvault as a migration tool to consolidate and rationalize some of our data center utilization. So in summary, really if I was going to say anything about Commvault and AWS and the Cloud Connector, is that it was a lifesaver for me and some of the technical guys in our business, because we were presented with a challenge that we didn't really have an answer for, and this came along at a convenient time and really saved us a lot of heartache. So I can't stress enough how good that piece of technology is, and I'm really excited about the direction that Commvault is going with their cloud strategy. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions about it in more details, feel free to come and talk to me at any point during the conference. Back to John.
Great, thank you, Jesse. All right, so we're just gonna wrap up a few things, key learnings, key takeaways, whatever you wanna call them. So, native cloud support, in my opinion, but if you look at the logic behind it, it's mandatory, again, with the limitations of only what can write can understand. So, obviously we hope you go with AWS and their new stores offerings, but should you choose another, more than likely we're gonna support it. And again, bandwidth availability is the key into the cloud. Move that data once and only once, and forever going on, just send those incremental changes. And again, that vendor lock-in, the thing we like to say at Commvault is, for whatever reason you decide to the cloud tomorrow, we're gonna help you do that. Or if you're, of course, I'll put it, I'm speaking at the AWS show, but if you're in Azure and say, we don't like this, we wanna go to AWS, we're gonna have a tool that will allow you to break those chains there. And again, a bit redundant there on the cloud appliances. They make it easy, but really tie your hands as to what you can do with that data.